Welcome to Indigenous Insights, special topics, missing and murdered Indigenous women. This is our third episode of this series. My name is Mitch Bolo. I'm a member of the Keweenaw Bay Indian community. I live and work here on the KBIC Reservation in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And joining us remotely, all the way from Ontario, we have Ariel Faulds. She works in Indigenous Victim Services. Ariel, you set up and ready to go or what?
Yep.
Okay, so let's tell them where they can find us first. These episodes air on Eagle Radio here in the UP Saturdays at noon Eastern. We also stream from keepitintheup.com. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitter. We have a dedicated channel just for the MMIW episodes, so make sure you check it out for past episodes. This show was designed to bring awareness to the epidemic that is missing and murdered Indigenous women, giving a voice to the voiceless. Okay, so Ariel, take us in. Tell us who we're featuring for today's story.
Today's story is about Ricarda Tillman-Lockett. She was born on April 12, 1984. She's a member of the Winnebago tribe from the res in Sioux City. She lived in Sioux City on and off growing up, but in her late teens she settled down in Memphis, Tennessee, and she lived there until the time of her disappearance. Her family describes her as fun to be around in the life of the party. She was working as a waitress at Jillian's restaurant in Memphis when she was last seen on February 19, 2007.
2007, and she was born in 1984, so that puts her just a few years older than me.
Yep.
Okay, so give us some of the facts that you have then behind her disappearance.
It was reported by the people who she worked with that she was picked up from the restaurant by her estranged husband, Lou Lockett, and she was supposed to pick up her 11-month-old son from the babysitter later that day, but she never showed up to do that.
Okay, so estranged husband, that means, wait, was he estranged at the time?
Yeah, they were in the middle of a breakup.
Okay, I'm not really sure what that word meant, estranged, but they were having troubles at the time. He picked her up from work and nobody's seen her again.
Right.
Okay, and then she had a kid in daycare.
At the babysitters.
At the babysitters, okay. Okay, I'm keeping up. Continue with the facts.
So Lou told police that he dropped Ricarda off at a women's shelter after he picked her up from work. And due to the whole situation between them, that's where Ricarda was staying at the time. But the shelter said that they did not see her return that day. And there's also been news reports where Lou stated that he dropped Ricarda off at their home. So there's already some conflicting statements here.
So he's saying he dropped her off at two different places?
Yep.
Okay, so just like the past episodes here, it almost seems like there's a suspect right off the bat.
A little bit, yeah. Ricarda's boss she was one of the people who filed a missing persons report when she didn't show up for work for 2 days, and she was known to be a very reliable employee. Her boss said that even if Ricarda was going to be a couple minutes late, she'd call her just to tell her that. And her family has stated that Ricarda did have the tendency to take off unannounced, but she would never go without contacting her family somehow, and she would have never left her son behind. After she disappeared, custody of her son was given to Ricarda's aunt. And the judge who made that decision was concerned that Lou Lockett, Ricarda's estranged husband, was a risk to the child's safety, given Lou's history as being an abuser, and that Lou had been heard stating that Ricarda was dead, although she hadn't been located.
Okay, so that does raise some red flags here. First of all, do you have any information about his past, his abusive history?
I have a little bit. I wasn't actually able to find his actual criminal history, just based on news reports. He does have a abusive history with Ricarda that led her to being at the women's shelter.
Okay, so that was the root of the problems they were currently facing at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so her son is given over to the aunt because Lou is seen as kind of a risk.
Yeah, because of, he's a safety risk, basically.
Yeah.
But just 8 months after the judge ruled that, a different judge gave custody back to Lou.
Okay, so Lou was fighting it in the courts.
Yep. Authorities believe that Ricarda is no longer alive, and they are investigating her disappearance as a homicide. And unfortunately, Ricarda's family feels the same. Ricarda's mother, Francesca, said that she can barely bring herself to talk about it sometimes because it hurts too much, and that she took down all the pictures of Ricarda because it's too hard to be reminded of her. But Ricarda's whole family believes they know who did it, and they've stated that the police agree with them, but the police haven't been able to prove anything or find any physical evidence. They haven't even found any physical evidence that she's no longer alive. So the family and the police, of course, they believe Lou Lockett killed her and disposed of her body.
Yeah, I mean, she just sort of up and disappeared.
Yeah, and he was the last person seen with her, and yeah, it's just, that's as soon as I started reading about this case, that seemed like that's where it all pointed.
Absolutely. So no hard evidence, no body. I mean, there's nothing really to go on there. It's hard to even ask. I mean, there's no evidence at all. There was no cameras, no nothing. I mean, in the other case, one of the other girls, popped up and her cousin had seen her. She just disappeared straight off the earth after her shift there.
Yeah, according to the police, they haven't been able to find any physical evidence, so other than people saying stuff. And I don't know if they've investigated that. I don't know how the family feels about how the police have treated this case either. But that's kind of where it's been.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about Lou. He was heard stating that she's already dead and, they don't have anything?
Yeah, that was part of the custody, that he was heard stating that, but I don't know who said that he said that.
Oh, it's one of those things.
Yeah, but a little bit more about Lou's history, especially with Ricarda, is that 3 weeks before Ricarda disappeared, police responded to a call at their home because Lou had strangled Ricarda during an argument.
Oh, wow.
When the police arrived, Lou was sitting in his vehicle with a loaded 9mm gun in the glove box, and this is the altercation that led her to staying in a domestic violence shelter.
Wow. So this isn't enough for them to take him in for her disappearing now?
Nope. Which, I mean, I'm not a police officer, so I don't really know, but just looking at this from my position, I definitely think, like, yeah, go arrest them. Like, what are you doing? But I don't know what the police are doing.
Okay, so this one's a little bit of I thought these stories would kind of be like those Netflix specials where there are some clear lines drawn and it seems like, well, do this, but there is nothing really to go on in this one. It's just such a quick disappearance.
Not anything that's made public anyway. I mean, Ricarda was granted an order of protection against Lou after that incident, and he was arrested and charged with assault for it.
After, when he had the 9mm in his glove box?
Yeah, after he strangled her, he was arrested for assault.
Wow. How are they even allowed to be kind of close to, why were they even allowed within certain parameters if she was in a shelter and, there was just this incident with a gun?
I was thinking that actually when I read this, because if she had an order of protection, that would mean that they shouldn't have been together at this time. So I don't know what the specifics are with that.
Okay, so what about the people that seen her getting in the vehicle when she took off from work? Did it appear that they were arguing, friendly or anything, or there's just no report on that?
No reports that I could find. There was nothing really other than that they said that they saw her leave with Lou. Man. Another thing that I found that kind of adds to the suspicion against Lou is that she told police at least 3 times in the past that Lou had threatened to kill her and her family. And she also told her father that she was afraid of Lou and had fears about him because she was getting ready to leave him.
Wow. So this here just seems wrong. I mean, it just seems wrong. There's so much there that does point to Lou. And, that's real threats. That's real stuff. People don't say that stuff unless they sort of mean it. Even if they say in rage or something, it just shows what someone might be capable of. That's some heavy stuff.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And I mean, talking with you about this, it's kind of like we're just 2 plain citizens and we're recognizing this stuff. So it kind of makes you question if the police are really doing their job as much as they should have been.
Yeah, I mean,
in my opinion.
Ricarda Tillman-Lockett, she got off work. She left with this guy. She didn't show up anywhere after that. Her kid left at the babysitter's and they had these disputes and arguments where law enforcement was involved ahead of time. It just seems wrong. Why is that guy still out and about if all that has happened? I mean, what did they do to him? I mean, did they bring him in and interrogate him or anything?
They questioned him, but there's nothing. It led to nothing.
Because you did say that the law enforcement does feel that this guy was, involved.
Yeah, they feel that he was involved, but they weren't able to find that evidence. But did they really look that hard? I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there was no search for a body or anything like that. I mean, Sometimes if people go missing, here in the UP, if people go missing in the woods, they have teams out in the woods, they have dogs out in the woods trying to find whether it's a live person or remains or whatever. There was no search for her.
Not that was in any of the news. I went on Web Sleuths. I went back and read all of the news reports from around the time that she went missing. There was nothing that was published about a search party. There was nothing that was published about other than what I just said, that she had left work and now she's missing.
Yeah, seen it, man. And like you said, we're just two civilians here sort of just talking about this stuff, but, we're kind of coming across some of the common sense things to do. Why wouldn't they have a search party? I mean, if this person is missing for a certain amount of time, you got to at least put a search out there. You hope for the best and you hope that she turns up somewhere, but if she's not, you got to get the search on.
Exactly. And if nobody's looking for her, how is she going to be found?
Ariel, Lou is a suspicious guy.
Lou is definitely a suspicious guy. After Ricarda disappeared, the family came forward with information that Lou wrote a book, and it was titled If M Was O and B. He says that the book is about the mafia, crime, and mob bosses. And while I haven't been able to find an actual copy of the book online or in print, I don't think I'd want to spend money on it anyways, I have found some excerpts online.
Okay.
And it's pretty weird.
Okay. He wrote a book, and it was about... Say that again.
He says that the book is about the mafia, crime, and mob bosses.
Okay.
But the excerpts that I read seem a little suspicious, and the family thinks so too.
This is getting good. What's this book
Parts of the
say?
book talk about killing people, getting rid of bodies, and making sure nobody ever finds them. It describes people using acid to get rid of human bones. And the excerpt I found says there's a part in the book that talks about disposing of a woman's bones after she's eaten by a tiger. It says, everybody's gathered around the barrel of acid and watched as Dawn dropped the bones of Doran in the acid. The acid immediately ate the bones up to nothing.
Wow. Okay, so, the family is suspicious of this, but, couldn't the guy just have kind of I don't know, he's interested in those types of stories? Many people are.
He could be, but the family thinks that it's kind of like instructions on how to get rid of a body. And, I'm into crime stuff. I watch crime shows, but I don't have a violent history.
Yeah.
This book, along with Lou's violent history and violent tendencies, I feel that it's not an innocent thing that he wrote this book.
Yeah, but see, learning more about this true crime stuff, we do got to kind of stick with that innocent until proven guilty. Just say he wasn't involved and say he really did drop her off. Say he really does just have an interest in that kind of material. The law is there to protect people and for him to do that. But it is creepy. It is creepy. Well, here's a question. What kind of acid did they use? And was it like something that he was familiar with?
I didn't find that. In all the things that I found, it just said using acid to get rid of bones.
Yeah. Because...
The family finds that to be really disturbing based on the fact that his wife's missing.
It is disturbing. It's very disturbing. But, that's kind of, the mafia. The mafia does that kind of thing. But it is just so suspicious. It does add to the story.
Yeah, and I know that, he's innocent until proven guilty, but... in my opinion, based on what I've read, he just doesn't seem like a good guy.
Yeah, if we're going to speculate, what if he was dealing with that guilt? Because a lot of times law enforcement just has to let, somebody who did a crime speak, because a lot of times they'll confess on their own because humans live with guilt. So, maybe that could be a way that he was sort of almost, confessing what he did without confessing what he did.
Yeah, just like OJ.
Yeah, maybe. It is all speculation. It all just adds to the story, and it adds to that frustrating feeling too, that where we just we want to know more. But that's why we're here doing these episodes, to create awareness so people can find out more. Do you have any more excerpts from the book?
No, other than the The one that I read that was an exact quote, and the one about disposing women's bodies after she's eaten by a tiger, that was it. I tried looking for the book really, really hard.
Yeah, I was going to see if it was up on Amazon or something. So where did you find those excerpts at then?
It was in news articles.
In just different news articles and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so how long was it after Ricarda went missing that he wrote this book?
One of the news articles was about 2 years, so in like 2009, and then the other one was in late 2009, so like 2 or 3 years.
A couple of years later then.
Yeah.
Well, what's some of the other recent developments?
As of 2017, Ricarda's mom, Francesca, is raising Ricarda's son. He's now 13. Other than that, there hasn't been any developments on Ricarda's case that I've been able to find as far as solid leads. The family hasn't given up hope that they'll be able to lay Ricarda to rest someday. Also in 2017, Memphis police received a tip that remains found in Oklahoma could be Ricarda's. They got DNA samples from Ricarda's mom and her son, but it was found that the remains weren't hers.
Okay, so that was a whole nother case. What about how did Lou lose custody of the boy again?
I was not able to find that. It kind of seems like there was some press about it when it first happened, a little bit of press when the family came forward with the book, and then in between then and 2017, there was like nothing that I could find.
Wow. Okay, so you're sort of the knowledge behind all this. What can even happen with this case other than Ricarda either showing up and saying, hey, I'm fine the whole time, or someone stepping up and saying, I'm the one who did it? I mean, is there anything else that we can hope for?
I mean, maybe if they find her remains, that would be able to give the family the ability to lay her to rest. But other than that, I don't think there's anything.
So I feel like, the average person feels like crimes can be solved. There's evidence somewhere. Law enforcement is going to find it and the crime will be solved. But sometimes it's just not the case. I mean, we just need somebody to stand up and say they did it. Other than that, it's going to be an unsolved case, you think? I
think so. Because, we're getting to a point now where, you're using DNA databases that people are getting their DNA to these companies, and then the companies are giving that information to the police, and they've found they've solved a few cold cases that way recently. But with the technology that's around now and stuff like that, yeah, there's going to be unsolved cases, and I don't like that fact, but there is going to be.
That's why we're doing this here now. We'll bring awareness to these cases and we'll kind of get it out there as much as we can. What else do we have? Do we have any other recent developments? Any other suspicious activity from Lou? Is he going to be writing a sequel to his book?
I haven't seen a sequel, but you never know, I guess.
So some of the facts from this case, once again, Ricarda Tillman-Lockett. She went missing after a shift at work in 2007. She got into a vehicle with her estranged husband, Lou, the author, and she was never seen again. Her kid was left at the babysitter. Lou said he dropped her off at, a couple different places. That's one of the big things in the story that, just points right to him. He said that what was the two different sources? He said that he dropped her off at a shelter and something else.
He told police that he dropped her off at the shelter, and then he told a news reporter that he dropped her off at their house.
At their house. Okay, so yeah, it's just a sort of unsolved case, and it does kind of seem like the law is holding things back just a little bit, because I feel like with everything they have against Lou, there should be something there. Okay, so I'll admit that we've called out law enforcement in the last couple of episodes for lack of effort, people not being questioned properly or at all, stuff like that. In this instance, though, it sounds like the law enforcement did want to go after Lou, the husband, but they didn't have the evidence against him. Although, as we've heard today, there's plenty of reason for suspicion of Lou. So maybe sometimes it can be the laws the enforcers are protecting that's slowing things up. And even the laws are getting better, though. Ariel, you were telling me about NamUs. What is NamUs?
NamUs is the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. It's a national database in the U.S. that is just a database of missing people.
And this is becoming more widespread and more widely used, right?
Yeah, in 2017, for example, there was a bill passed in Tennessee called Help Find the Missing Act, and it requires law enforcement agencies to enter missing persons into NamUs after 30 days. And it also required coroners to enter DNA, fingerprints, dental records for unidentified bodies.
Okay, so was there anything like that around before?
Yeah, NamUs has been around since 2007, and it's a great thing to have. But the problem with it is that there's not really laws that require law enforcement agencies to add information to NamUs.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it was like an organization system that was optional, and then now it's just kind of so effective, they're making it kind of across the board.
I hope so.
You hope so. So, well, is there other states that are doing that, putting bills out there that require law enforcement to use this system?
Yeah, there was a few that I found, but there's also a lot that I found that are underreporting these things into NamUs.
Okay, so that's something else that we're kind of bringing awareness to. Then is that this NamUs system could be great as long as everybody uses it, and it is great, but it'll be even better if everybody uses it.
Yeah, in Tennessee specifically, they are only entering about 1/4 of the missing person cases into NamUs. So the new law will help to make sure that missing people are added to the database, and I think that's great.
Okay, very good. But also at the same time, when it comes to this case here, we don't know where Ricarda's at. So there's not really any DNA or anything that can be tested.
Right, but they can still put her into the database, and they can put her mother's DNA and her son's DNA into the database so that if somebody somewhere runs DNA, if they find Ricarda's remains, they're able to link that to being Ricarda.
Okay, I see. So then even if whoever did this to her brought her a few states away, as long as that state is using that system, she's going to be matched up.
Yeah. In regards to tribal jurisdictions, a law like this that makes it mandatory for missing persons report to be entered, it would be a tool for solving cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women that have often been under-investigated or uninvestigated. I think it would both help to increase the understanding of the reality of how many missing Indigenous people there actually are, since the statistics that are available are likely much lower than the real numbers, and maybe it would bring more attention to creating a solution. I also wanted to take the time to address the seriousness of non-fatal strangulation in intimate relationships. It's been shown that Ricarda's estranged husband Lou strangled her. To me, that tells me how much violence and abuse Ricarda was likely subjected to during the course of their relationship. Domestic violence and abuse escalates. It doesn't generally go from no abuse and no violence straight to strangulation. It escalates up to strangulation. It hurts me to know that someone who subjected Ricarda to something as horrific as strangulation is still free today. Non-fatal strangulation is the biggest indication that the violence between two people will escalate to murder. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, it's been shown that prior non-fatal strangulation increases the odds of becoming an attempted homicide by up to 6 times and becoming a completed homicide up to 7 times. According to the Alliance for Hope International, a very large majority of men who have killed police officers had a history of strangling women. So it's not only a domestic violence issue, which is extremely important in itself, it's everybody's issue. Strangulation can lead to traumatic brain injuries up to years after it happens. When I read that Lou was charged with assault, it bothered me a lot. Tennessee law classified strangulation as aggravated assault, which is the same law that displaying a deadly weapon falls under. Having a gun at you can, of course, be traumatic, and I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of a situation like that. I just want to bring attention to the fact that strangulation should be recognized in the court system as strangulation. Much like the law in Minnesota, domestic assault by strangulation. And this law states that it is a felony for a person to assault a family or household member by strangulation, which is intentionally impeding normal breathing or circulation of the blood by applying pressure on the throat or neck, or by blocking the nose or mouth of another person. I'd also like to point out that Tennessee revised its law in regards to strangulation and made it a felony that carries a sentence between 3 and 6 years. Indigenous communities usually have to rely on the federal government to prosecute strangulation cases to get a felony sentence. Court systems, jurisdiction, the Violence Against Women Act, they're all definitely something that we can talk about when we can dedicate a lot more time to those things. But strangulation should be prosecuted as strangulation. It has greater sentences for the person who strangled somebody, and it keeps that person out of society and lessens the chances that they'll be able to continue their violence against people. I can link some articles and resources everywhere that we post this story for those who are interested in reading more. I honestly would be able to talk for hours about strangulation itself and the dynamics of strangulation in intimate relationships, and I'm sure I'll be addressing it again in our future cases. If you or anybody you know are dealing with domestic violence or abuse at home, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 if you're in the U.S. And in Canada, you can contact 1-888-579-2888. Both of these hotlines will be able to connect you with local resources. If you'd like Indigenous-specific resources or agencies, these hotlines can help you connect with them too. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Ricarda Tillman-Lockett, please contact the Memphis Police Department at 901-373-3883.
All right, so Ariel, thank you so much once again for taking the time and doing the research for us. These shows are on Eagle Radio every Saturday at noon. We stream from keepitinthe.up.com, and we're also on YouTube and Twitter. And once again, Ariel, the feedback has been incredible. You actually got an email from a listener regarding our last case, didn't you?
Yeah, we got an email about our Alberta Williams case, actually, and it was about the possibility that it could be related to another case in Canada with a long blonde-haired man. So that was really interesting.
You know, and I'm guessing there's more than one long blonde-haired man in Canada, but you actually have a couple of mugshots, or you have one mugshot and one artist rendition?
There was an artist rendition, yeah, of a witness saw this man, and he killed 2 people in Blind River, Ontario. There is a podcast about that on The Trail Went Cold, and you can see those pictures on their website too.
Okay, and the other picture you had was from the guy from our case that we talked about.
Yep, of Ken Collinson.
That's right, that's his name. And the pictures, there's a resemblance, 100%. There's a resemblance there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But the only thing about it is, wasn't it on opposite sides of the country, though?
Yeah, the Alberta Williams case happened in British Columbia, and the Blind River killer was in Ontario, so north of Lake Superior.
So it was kind of a big spread there, but who knows? Who knows? What if it happened to be? Anyways, we do appreciate that feedback, and you can get a hold of us if you have questions, suggestions, if you have any cases you might know of. What is our contact email, Ariel?
Indigenous Insights, MMIW@gmail.com.
Okay, so until next time, this is Indigenous Insights, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. My name is Mitch.
And I'm Ariel.
Bama P.